everyone, my name is Yasemin and I'm going to be talking to you all today about my project Digital Sound Bath, which is an 8.1 surround sound audio experience that I recently had the privilege of delivering at this year's BBC Proms. I'm going to be using a lot of technical terms and I'm going to try to explain them the best that I can, but if you have any questions, please do feel free to ask me at the end. I've spent the last year working at the BBC as an open music trainee, and I've been learning about broadcasting and media operations. Here is a look at the things I will be covering in this session. And this is a brief explanation of the project. So I essentially decided that I wanted to create an immersive experience where the audience could lie down and take some time out and be surrounded by sound. And that's why I used an 8.1 surround sound audio setup with a sub-bass speaker so that people could really feel the sound waves traveling through their body. I'll explain the 8.1 setup and talk more about it later. The Sound Bath explores the integration between nature and technology. And I used a wide range of experimental sound recording and editing practices in order to reflect this. Anyway, here is a 5-minute long clip of the Sound Bath for you all to listen to. So just try and relax and close your eyes if you would like to. Okay, so I knew that I wanted to have a lot of fun while producing this project, and that I wanted to push the hardware and software to its limits. I also knew that I wanted to use a range of different experimental and non-conventional production and audio recording techniques. So I did a lot of field recording in different locations. This included birdsong, wind chimes, and flowing water. And then I also recorded 7 different crystal singing bowls, which are all different pitches. And then I combined these recordings with techniques like no input mixing, granular synthesis, electromagnetic field pickup, glitch, and a few other things to create a 20-minute long piece. Okay, so now I'm going to explain some of these practices. What is no input mixing? So no input mixing turns a regular mixing console into an instrument, and this is done by connecting the output of the mixer into the input of the mixer, creating a feedback loop that can be controlled using the desk's mixers, faders, pots, and sends. In general, feedback is something that most people want to avoid, but in this context, I was able to use this technique to create a low bass drone for my sound bath. This really pushes the hardware to its limits, and after some time, these techniques will fry the circuits inside the mixing desks and break it completely, which is why you need to use a dedicated no-input mixing desk. So I wanted to show you a video demonstration of no-input mixing in case you haven't seen it. So it's very unpredictable, but if you heard that low swooping note at the end and you heard the bass in the sound bath, that's basically what I created that into. Anyway, so what is electromagnetic field pickup? So an electromagnetic field pickup microphone allows us to hear the inaudible sounds that are generated by the electrical devices around us. So the microphone is a very simple device that uses an induction coil to capture and convert electromagnetic fields into audible sounds. It basically allows us to hear the electrical currents flowing through things that use electricity. This technique interested me because for this project, I wanted to explore the sounds all around us that they're inaudible to us, but we're kind of soaking them in every day without really knowing that they're there. So in case you haven't seen electromagnetic field pickup, this is a short demonstration of this technique. Okay. So I use that a lot for the little effects and fills in the sound bath. Okay, so granular synthesis. What is granular synthesis? Granular synthesis is a sound synthesis method that operates on a microsound timescale, and it works by dividing an audio file into tiny segments called grains. The grains are then jumbled up and recombined in a new order to make new sounds. The grains can be anywhere from 1 millisecond to 100 milliseconds in duration. And in the software, you can adjust the speed, volume, phase, and frequency of the grains to vary the waveform. I use granular synthesis in the sound bath to create a more interesting and textured sonic environment. I mainly used it for my field recordings like the wind chimes and birdsong. And if you have Logic Pro, you can use the native Alchemy manipulation synthesizer to generate granular synthesis. So it's actually really easy. Okay. 8.1 surround sound. What is 8.1 surround sound? So this audio configuration is definitely not very common at all. It consists of 8 speakers on stands in a circle, measured accurately with a tape measure to ensure that they're all evenly spaced apart. As well as this, there's a large sub-bass speaker placed on the floor, and there also needs to be an interface with a 10-channel output capacity in order to process all of the information coming out of the laptop and send it to the correct speakers. This technique worked for my project because it's extremely immersive, and it invites the audience to lay on beanbags in the middle. In my DAW project, my digital audio workstation, there ended up being 68 audio channels for all the different aspects of a sound bath. And I routed the 68 individual audio channels out of the 8 different speakers in the circle and the sub. And so this basically meant that each of the 9 speakers had a different sound coming out of it at all times. So the audience could enter into a state of deep listening. Once the audio had all been routed to the appropriate speakers, I kind of wanted to take it a step further by adding spatial audio plugins. What is spatial audio? Spatial audio creates sound that surrounds the listener, coming from any direction within a 360-degree sphere. It can mimic how sounds occur naturally, making them seem like they're coming from different places. By using spatial audio, sounds can be played from multiple speakers at different times, making the environment feel more realistic and more immersive. Because of the 360 nature of a circle, I decided to use spatial audio plugins so that the sound would travel and ping around the circle of speakers in an organic and interesting way. And I did this by using the GRM Spaces plugins. These are plugins that allow control over sound placement and movement in stereo, multi-channel, and multi-speaker setups. And I decided to use these tools because they enabled me to add dynamic and multi-directional movement to the audio. Okay, so troubleshooting and organization. So as I mentioned earlier, I delivered this at the BBC Proms. I did it over 2 concerts, which was amazing. But as I'm sure you can imagine, there are a lot of different elements that went into this project and into the live delivery of it. So I want to end my talk with a discussion about troubleshooting. A lot of routing is necessary in the setup of this project for both the hardware and the software. And there really isn't that much margin for error. But luckily, because of the amount of planning that was done beforehand, it was actually really easy to set up on the day of the event because I had told the venue everything. We'd sorted out floor plans, so they knew what was going on. And the thing with the 8.1 setup is it also needs to be very specific, because if the speakers aren't properly aligned, then there can be issues with phasing and latency Sadly, I was unable to help with the setup of my 8.1 system as I was in a wheelchair because I fractured my tibia 6 days before the prom. So I had to instruct the in-house engineers to do it for me, and that was indeed quite a setback. The experience generally, though, really did show me how important it is to know my equipment, stay organized, plan efficiently, and even though I couldn't physically assist, my prior preparation basically made it possible for the team to set up the equipment properly. Anyway, that brings us to the end of my talk. Q&A.
Certainly illustrates why you shouldn't sleep next to your mobile phone. Any questions for Yasemin on everything we've heard? Right at the back, please. Thank you.
You talked about the positioning of the speakers being important. What was the overall scale? What was the size of the auditorium you had them positioned in? And how much of a sweet spot was there for the listeners? Did it only really work absolutely in the centre, or could you move around a bit and still have a satisfactory result?
Great question. So I've tried this configuration in a few different setups. Obviously, when I was mixing it, it was in a much smaller room. So then when we went through to the concert hall, it was massive, and there were a lot of issues with resonant frequencies that I didn't expect to be there because the room change was, you know, it played a big factor in that, I think. But I think that generally, when people were listening to it, some people were saying like the speaker by them was a lot louder. But I think they could hear the whole thing. I think it is relative to where you sit within the circle, if you know what I mean. But also I think the room that I did it in was probably definitely a bit bigger than this, and the circle was massive. So I think there's quite a lot of factors that come into it.
How different did what we heard in stereo compare
Completely.
to...
Just completely different. And we put 40 beanbags down on the floor. So basically everyone was just like LED, we had mood lighting, and it was just like really immersive, fully surround. And the sub was on the floor, so the vibrations were kind of traveling through the floor as well. Yeah.
Goodness. So we just heard it on medium wave almost. Right. Right. Any more questions from Yasemin? Yes, one there, thank you. And another question up there afterwards. So it's great. Oh.
Thank you, it was amazing. I'm a big, deep listener, sound bath junkie. What is the main benefit or difference of creating the listening experience with technology in this surround or spatial sound, whatever you want to call it, versus, say, people with gongs and bowls actually performing and playing?
Such a good question as well.
Good.
I've attended quite a few like traditional sound baths. I mean, I guess there's a lot of different ways you could look at it, but I think the difference is that it requires a different kind of setup, and it enables us to kind of integrate with technology and digital sounds a little bit more, whereas the singing bowls, I recorded those traditional, they're in there, and there's chimes in there, so there's a lot of the traditional things in there, but I wanted the addition, and also it allows you to have full control over the way that frequencies travel, what effects you want to put on it, and you can kind of enter a much deeper kind of state of production and creative exploration, I think. So that's what was really fun for me.
I think there's another question over there, actually, if we just get the cube.
Excellent. I was wondering if you're familiar with the work of Alvin Lusher, who experimented with feedback in 1973.
Sitting in a room?
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
I absolutely am. I actually recreated that myself for the fun of it, you know.
All right. And yeah, I've done something similar to your sound bath 10 years ago for my PhD using 16 speakers.
Wow.
And,
that's so cool.
And the one thing about frequencies and how to find a sweet spot, and this is also in relation to the previous question, is that instead of placing the speakers in a circle, you can play with that shape, placing them in a ellipsis or an eye shape.
Oh, cool.
And basically polarizing the bass frequencies at the far ends and the trebles and the low ends.
Brilliant, thank you
for the future.
Yeah, that's really awesome, thank you, great.
Yasemin, thank you very much indeed for your
Thank you.
presentation today.